after the destruction of our welfare system. And remember, under original welfare guidelines, 70% of the recipients were children. After the 1994 Omnibus Crime Bill that exploded the system of mass incarceration that I want to address a little bit at the end. The deregulation of the FCC that turned the airwaves over to roughly a half dozen corporations. All of this was planned. In 2004, Sanders was calling on Nader to suspend his campaign. Sanders has always served as a kind of watchdog for the Democratic Party, and in return, they have not mounted a serious campaign to unseat him in Vermont, and he, in turn, has done everything he can to stymie third-party movements in Vermont. I think Sanders honestly believed that he had a chance. I think we are watching now a legitimate anger on the part of Sanders and those around him as they understand that the game was fixed from the beginning. And yet, I fear that Sanders will do what he says he's going to do, which is endorse the Democratic nominee. And at that moment, Sanders becomes an impediment to social change. If Bernie Sanders does not want to build a third-party movement, then we are going to have to build it without him. And we are going to have to free ourselves from this belief that we are going to make serious social change within the confines of a particular electoral cycle. We are going to have to begin to organize and recognize that what we are building towards may be 10 years away. When Syriza began, it was polling 4%. By the time Syriza took power, it had a majority within Greece. We have to hold fast to that moral imperative. We have to stand up and be willing to defy the system. We have to step outside of the system. And the system will be ruthless in terms of its response. But we are reaching a moment of convergence, of deadly environmental degradation, breakdown. We're already watching it. Many of the refugees and migrants that are streaming into Europe, yes, there's war, but there's also tremendous drought in Syria. And this system is incapable of responding in a rational way to the degradation of the environment caused by the fossil fuel industry, and let me not forget the animal agriculture industry. Wall Street has been unleashed once again with money that has been given by the Fed at roughly 0% interest. And so at some point, we are going to see another financial crisis that may be twinned with an ecological crisis. And at that point of breakdown, within a system that is incapable of responding, except to further enrich and empower a global corporate elite, you will have large segments of the population. We are witnessing this at the moment in Europe, turning to these proto-fascist forces that are embodied in figures like Trump. Richard Rorty, in his book, Achieving Our Country, was the last book he wrote, warned that the inability of self-identified liberal elites to respond to the suffering of the underclass, while it continued to speak in the language of diversity and multiculturalism, was actually empowering the nativist, racist, homophobic forces that are gathering around Trump. Why? Because they redefined empowerment. What did feminism become? Not empowering oppressed women, the way Andrea Dworkin called us to do, but by having a woman president or a woman CEO. And that lie, which was perpetuated by liberal elites, because the assault on people of color has been far more draconian than it has been on the white working class, allows demagogues like Trump to sell a message to dispossessed whites that they have been disadvantaged or disenfranchised because entitlements have been given to other marginalized groups. And the lie of our liberal elite has essentially come back, a kind of blowback against them. If Hillary Clinton becomes president, a political figure who embodies everything on each side of the political spectrum we have come to detest, then you may get rid of Trump, but you will vomit up somebody even more vile. And the only way that we're going to be able to break the back of this rising proto-fascist movement tied to the gun culture and the Christian right is to build a viable left that holds fast to the moral imperative of defending the interests of working men and women in this country, and is willing to be pushed outside of power for a certain period of time, rather than dilute or give up that moral imperative, which is something, by the way, that Rosa Luxemburg understood. And it's we who have to do it. And if we don't do it, then we are going to see ourselves slide into a very frightening form of despotism, one where a state or a system of neoliberalism, which has lost all credibility, is forced to maintain power by carrying out increasingly more vicious and brutal forms of violence. This is something Hannah Arendt understood in Origins of Totalitarianism when she wrote about the stateless, which is essentially what people of color in marginal communities are, stateless. They have no rights. They have been taken from them. Police serve as judge, jury, and executioner. And I teach, as you heard, in a prison I just finished teaching Sheldon Oland's great work, Politics and Vision, to my class. 94% of the people in our prison system never had a trial, because the system is designed to deny them a trial. In fact, the students I teach who have the longest sentences went to trial, and they were punished for it, because they stack charges against you, and then they barter, like a poker game. But if you go to court, all of those charges are arrayed against you. And they have to give you a longer sentence because they use you as an example. They say, look, he went to trial, or she went to trial. And that's the sentence they got, so you better take the sentence we're offering. You can understand the awful dynamics of the corporate state by looking at what it does to the most vulnerable among us, and the best place to do that is in a prison where corporations have reached their deadly tentacles down to every facet of prison life. Global Telling, which has taken over the phone services, and let's remember, the phone is the primary way that children remain in contact with their incarcerated parents. Is 4 to 5 times higher than what we pay. Commissary has been privatized, and prices have ratcheted upwards. In New Jersey, you make $28 a month for 40 hours a week. It's neo-slavery. It's alive and well. And prices are now beyond reach. You're no longer given shoes. In the state of New Jersey, you have to spend $45 for a pair of Reeboks. If you send a money transfer through JPay, it's privatized. So you send $20, you get a $4.95 service fee. On and on and on. Fees are now imposed on you in prison. For instance, if you have a bereavement visit to someone who's dying, or you visit a member of the immediate family who's dead, 15 minutes you get. You pay for the guards, the overtime. It's $900. So my students are getting out of prison thousands of dollars in debt And when they get out of prison in thousands of dollars in debt, as ex-felons, they can't get jobs, one, because there aren't any jobs, and two, because they're demonized. And if they can't maintain those payments, they go right back into prison. And that's why that guy who got stopped for a taillight runs and is shot in the back.